mic. And just go down this aisle here. Because there's a fair amount of candidates, there was a lot of you, there's not a ton of time tonight. We're gonna try and get as many questions in as possible. And we'll just see what happens. I've got some questions that were submitted before the event today, some that were written down, so I've got those sort of anonymous ones. And of course, if you would like to ask somebody right here, that's great. So, starting at that end of the table, we've got the Green Party candidate for Secretary of State, George Wolf. The Democratic candidate for U.S. Congress in this district, Janine Lee Lake. And two candidates for local office, County Commissioner Dave Green. And Jason Dunn. We'll just start back in the same order. If you could just give us a quick intro of yours and go from there.
This is unusual. We go in reverse alphabetical order. I'm usually
That's not a very good library.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. And my name is George Wolf. I'm the candidate for Secretary of State in the Green Party ticket. And I'm running on the Green Party ticket because I share its values of social justice, grassroots democracy, nonviolence, and sustainability. I've had a career teaching in higher education for 37 years and was on the faculty at Ball State University in the School of Music as a performing artist. That is why, if you've seen my most recent platform video, I have been very much a determined advocate for the arts and education. I also chaired the School of Music Multicultural Committee for 20 years. While at Ball State, I was director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies for 4 years, and also served as the outreach coordinator, and I'm a trained mediator. As the director of the Peace Center, I sought to bring together diverse groups together to build bridges and understanding, in particular people of diverse faith traditions. And many of you may have seen some of the articles that I've written that have been in the Star Press of Muncie, Indianapolis Star, Northwest Indiana Times, and so forth. Now, most people running for office today say they are not politicians. But I have to be honest with you, I am a politician. And no one can survive 37 years teaching in higher education without knowing how to be political. But I'm a politician that uses soft power rather than hard power. Hard power is the power of coercion that uses adversarial confrontation. But soft power is the power of persuasion that builds mutual trust through collaborative relationships. Unfortunately, today we have an extremely polarized, adversarial political culture. As the Secretary of State, I would like to work to change that political culture from an adversarial one to a culture that builds trust and cooperation. I am in favor of ranked choice voting. I don't know if you've heard of ranked choice voting, but it eliminates the possibility that a third-party candidate can be a spoiler. I want to establish Election Day as a statewide holiday. And I want to secure elections through a simpler, much less expensive system of using paper ballots. I also support same-day voter registration, because states with same-day registration have the highest voter turnout. Our electoral system is burdened with the corrupt influence of corporate, big money, special interest groups. In addition, the two major parties have both been guilty of gerrymandering in the past and supporting unfair ballot access laws. The current Secretary of State and Republican legislature have engaged in voter suppression tactics, and Indiana ranks in the lower third of the 50 states in voter turnout, which is totally unacceptable. Only a Secretary of State that's from outside the two political parties, I believe, can bring an end to these forms of party-based political corruption and gerrymandering. really stumps me. I believe the Secretary of State should be an advocate for the voters, and if elected, I pledge to assume that role and make it more convenient to vote, not less convenient to vote. Please go to my website to learn more about my plan for Indiana, and I look forward to answering your questions this evening. Thank you.
Ms. Lake?
Hi there, you guys. I'm Janine Lee Lake, and some of you know me here in Muncie. I've been a reporter for 15 years at the Star Press, and then I also own my own newspaper called The Good News. It formerly used to be the Muncie Times, and it's kind of a play on words because my husband is a pastor, and the good news of Christ is the gospel. And because I just like writing about good things. I've been a journalist, like I said, for 30 years. I'm a Ball State graduate, and I did my undergrad and my graduate work there. My husband is also a Ball State employee. He's actually the longest employed administrator of color at Ball State University. Now, there are some others that have been there longer in janitorial positions and other positions, but he's been there the longest, and I'm really proud of him. So sometimes I say that. I decided to run for Congress. I got to thinking about it, I think, on November the 9th of 2016. Does anybody remember that day? Right. I think I woke up and I tried to pinch myself again and decide if this was a nightmare or if this had happened. Since then, in my opinion, some things in terms of our government and our country have really deteriorated, especially when it comes to Congress and the leaders that we thought we had on both sides that have, in my opinion, failed us as American citizens. They failed to stand up and to discuss, the situation that we have in the Oval Office in terms of how our presidency, in my opinion, has been degraded in many ways. I want to be a congressperson that will put party behind me and put country and Americans first. I am a Democrat, though. And I beat 5 guys to get here, because the last time I was in this room, as many of you know, I had 5 other guys, not these dudes, that were here. And, by the grace of God, we prevailed. We won by almost 3,000 votes. It was a mandate, and I'm glad that I was part of that. But since then, I've been able to decide, as a candidate, how do I want to represent myself, and how do I want to represent the 6th District? I had a platform of sorts, and I did. You also saw my webpage. You saw that, we had our 4-4, which are the opioid crisis, education, safe schools, and infrastructure. Those are very important to me. But as I've gotten out and among the community and among the 19 counties in this district, I've also added to that some things I call my values. Values of wanting to care, wanting to help the farmers in Rush County, whose soybeans are down $2 an hour, $2 a bushel. To help the people in Henry County that are having a big controversy about windmills. To help the people of Knightstown who are having problems with brown water in Henry County. So those are some of the things that I think I've learned over the last several months since I did win the primary. Some things that have become pertinent to me to discuss whenever we go out. I always say that we can talk a lot about, the hotbed things. We can talk a lot about, cultural wars. We can talk even tonight about, the different things. But I'm talking about, what I really enjoy talking about are the things that matter to this particular district. The things that matter to Hoosiers right now. Healthcare, that's huge. Medicare for all. I'm in 100% for Medicare for all. I want to start with it's already at 65 and above. I think a good place to start would be the 25 to 34-year-olds who don't have a lot of healthcare problems already. We could start there because they don't have it, a lot of them don't have healthcare, but they do need healthcare. So what a great area to concentrate on. I've got some other ideas. I know he's back there doing his hand like this, so I'll move on. But thank you all for having me today. I appreciate it.
Mr. Ray.
Thank you. I am Dave Ring, and I am applying to be your next county commissioner. And I don't know, maybe you don't know much about me. I'm born and raised in Delaware County, and Sarah Ring and I ran the downtown farm stand for the last 11 years in downtown Muncie. We purchased organic food from local farms all over East Central Indiana. We have two children. I have Zach and Lena. They're 16 and 14. They both go to Burris School. And we have had our farm for 18 years out in the county over by Albany. And I have that rural and urban experience. You know, we operate our farm out in the county, and we chose to put our store right in the inner city of downtown to give everyone access to fresh food, to good, clean food, and was an important mission for us. I have business experience, and this is an administrative job. The county commissioner is an important job, and it's administrative, and you do a lot of hiring and firing. There's contracts, there's budgets, and there's real estate purchases, and I have a lot of experience in those areas, and hopefully I can put that to work for the people in Delaware County. I've never had a government position before. I've never worked for the government. I've never had an elected position, so definitely this would be my first venture into government work, and running as an independent. And as an independent, I want to work for the voters and not for a party. So when there's an issue that comes up, I can look at it cleanly, and I can work for you and not have a mandate from a party official telling me what to do. So really would like to open up the process and include people. So when there's an important decision, just be there for you as a voter. So when to get on the ballot as an independent, it's a pretty good story. We worked to get on the ballot. It took 35 volunteers to get 700 signatures in 2 weeks, and we did that. Not appointed, just put right on the ballot through the people, very grassroots. I consider myself a fighter when I need to be. We can fight for the people. I've worked with folks on the CAFO issue out in northern Delaware County, and 150 residents within a 1 mile radius of a 10,000 hog CAFO. And we currently, through grassroots work, we currently have that initiative stopped. There's a lot of issues around CAFOs, which we can get into. But even if you just consider the lowering of people's property values, the health of the environment, it was a really good initiative that we were able to do. And I'm interested in the jail issue. I don't think that's the way to go right now. I think it's a terrible plan for a number of different reasons, and we can get into that. But the location of the jail is bad. The economics of moving it out of the downtown are bad, and just the logic of keeping all your government, the Justice Center, the county building, the city building together. That's a logical conclusion that you want to keep around. You want to keep that efficiency of having those buildings together. Worked on eminent domain issue that folks in Yorktown are facing right now, having land taken away for economic development purposes. My economic development philosophy is, you have good schools, you have roads, streets, sidewalks, you have good public safety, you have nice parks, and if you do those things right with those government funds, economic development will take care of itself. You'll have good investment in your community. I don't feel like that we're taking care of the basics right now, and that's one thing that I think I can bring to the table. Good ideas. I think I have a track record of implementing good ideas. The farm stand, when we got involved with the farm stand, we were selling at farmers markets, and other organic farmers weren't able to sell everything that they produced. We weren't either. And we said, boy, if there was just a store that would buy our products, we're shut out of the corporate stores, the corporate grocery system. You know, they don't want the small local producers in there. And then if we can provide food for folks in the inner city at the same time, and give everybody access to clean food, not just make it on the north side of town where you gotta take the bus. And if we can serve as a grocery store for downtown at the same time, wouldn't that be great? And so we've done that for 11 years now. We just bought our building this year. We started the whole process with a $10,000 loan from a friend, and we're really proud of that. So I think that I'm the person that can really move things forward, and I'll appreciate talking to you more. Thanks for the time.
And finally, Mr. Bennett.
May I stand?
Oh, that was one thing I was gonna say in the intro. If at any point while answering the questions, you don't have to necessarily stay right there, you can.
Great. Thank you, Muncie Public Library, for hosting this. Thank you to everybody that came out. My name is Jason Donetti. I'm running for District 3 County Commissioner as a Democrat. I'm running for many different reasons, but the main reason I jumped into this race was because of this jail plan. I've looked into it as much as I possibly can, and the plan moving forward is not a good one. It's being rushed through, in my opinion, and they're not accepting very much public input. And I think the issue is our elected officials aren't listening to the people. And there are many examples of how elected officials aren't listening to the people, and it's already been brought up tonight as well with the CAFO issue. There's been work to try to put forth ordinances with CAFOs and zoning back in 2000 and 2007 and 8 that just dragged along. No one actually did anything with it. And I think there's a big issue when people are elected to a position and they're thinking about just maybe getting elected for the next term. So I'm here because I'm passionate about rehabilitation. I'm passionate about making our community stronger. I believe we need to promote a healthy workforce. I saw a list early in August of 20 to 25 different places in Muncie and Delaware County that were hiring, and they were good, decent paying jobs. But we don't have a healthy workforce right now that we can transition into those jobs. We have a drug epidemic. It needs to be declared a public health crisis, because maybe that will catch people's attention and actually we'll start to see priority spending to address that particular issue. And back to the jail is proposing to move everything out of downtown. And currently, I have not seen anything on paper or any money allocated for any sort of rehabilitation. They're proposing to spend $45 million. They've already spent $3 million of edit funds to purchase the building and to use for legal fees. And they're proposing that this will cost $45 million. But if we go back in history with the Justice Center and how it was built, they had originally said that that would cost $6.5 million. When it was finished in 1992, it cost us $65 million. And we had to pay interest on it. So we just paid the Justice Center off 2 years ago, and now commissioners are talking about giving it away for $1 and moving everything out of downtown. So I think it's important as a community that we make our voices heard in that particular issue, but in the issue that's facing our community in general, which is this public health crisis. And I'm for education. I ran for school board at Muncie Community Schools. Now I was nicely asked to leave recently. But I did, when I got in there, I fought for the people and the voices that weren't being heard. I fought for the teachers that weren't being heard. I supported collective bargaining rights, and I stood up for parents and families who had a lot of things to say, but no one was listening. And that's the same thing I'm going to take to the county building as a Delaware County Commissioner. I will make sure that we're holding public input forums. I will make sure that we're getting public input when we make major decisions. And I will make sure that I'm listening to the community to help do the best that we can to move Delaware County forward. I look forward to tonight and your questions and meeting some of you afterwards. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. At this point, if you have any questions for these folks, I would just ask you to come around here and start right here and make a line down this way. And while you're doing that, I'll read one of the ones that came in. This first one is for Janine Lake, but really anybody else, so I'll let you have the lead. Are you taking money from corporations or PACs?
Have you guys not seen my Federal Election Commission report? No, we are not. Although there are political action committees that do good things. Some work for the environment, some work for women's issues and things like that. We have not yet received monies from them. I'm not going to say that we might never, because it does depend on, like I said, what it is that they represent and who they represent. But sometimes they'll come across as saying one thing, they kind of maybe have a title that lends itself to, and you think, oh, well, that's not so bad, but then we've researched a couple of them, and we wouldn't want to be affiliated with them at all. So, no, I have not yet. I welcome any donations, but no, we have not done that yet, and I don't see us doing that unless it is a PAC that lines up with our political platform.
Well, I can say that the Green Party does not, and I will not, take any donations from corporations, only from private individuals. And because we believe there's too much of a special interest influence there, which can cloud the way a person sees reality and votes. So we're really against this heavy-duty corporate influx of money into the political arena. My budget has been, I've raised about $3,400. I run my campaign on $3,400 because I have a great group of volunteers. We're all over social media. You see from Twitter and Facebook and so forth. You see articles in the paper. No big money for me. We welcome contributions from individuals, and we're going to stick to that because that way I can vote my conscience and not my bank account.
No, I'm not, and I'm actually very much in favor of anti-corruption legislation that prevents things like accepting campaign donations from companies that you award contracts to as an elected official. Right now, that's a form of legalized corruption, and people don't know that happens all the time. And even in local offices, I've seen it happen here locally in Delaware County. And so I'm 100% against that. I would support anti-corruption legislation at the local level.
I mean, fundraising is grassroots fundraising, having fundraisers to get private donations from citizens and people. But I have interviewed with PACs from specific unions and hope for endorsements. And potentially, right now I haven't received any financial contributions, but when I have interviewed with certain PACs, like in different unions, there is a potential that they could make a financial contribution to my campaign. So.
Our first question from the audience.
My name is Stacy Stinson. I'm a Delaware County Green Party activist and community activist. I've been in Muncie for about 25 years, volunteer graduate. You've all, most of you have alluded to the pending opioid crisis, which is really under wraps, but set to explode at any point here, as it is in many communities. And as of yet, we have no real way of handling the coming epidemic of HIV, which has been spreading in Northern County in Indiana, Austin, and Indiana, where population of drug users blew the statistics on HIV infections and Hep C infections. That treatment program consisted of a needle exchange program that the doctor initiated on his own and was able to reduce the epidemic down and contain it to the population of about 10,000 in this small community in northern Indiana. We're having a similar outbreak of Hep C cases, and what we're afraid of is that this is also going to contain a lot of HIV, as this is a large needle using community. none of the candidates seem to be willing to address the issue with a safe needle exchange program. Everybody seems to be opposed to it. We've got Democrats and Republicans both saying what we need to do is get tough on drugs. And that's worked really, really well for us for the last 40 years. So they're just basically saying they still don't have any answers and they're just gonna exacerbate the problems. How do you guys feel about working with the situation with the health department and with the volunteers? We've got faith-based organizations that are trying to set up beds as an alternative to spending $5 or $50 or $200 million on a new jail outside of town, and just incarcerating more people and making more addiction problems.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big issue why I ran. It's a public health crisis. We can't arrest our way out of it. We've even heard our our law enforcement officers say that, but that's what keeps happening. You get rid of, or you so-called squash the meth issue, heroin comes up. You start to work on heroin, meth comes up. You give someone Vivitrol, they can use meth because it's an opioid blocker. There are multiple issues that are related to the resources in our community that we are not providing. And while I think it's great that certain nonprofits and faith-based organizations are helping with this issue because government officials aren't, it needs to be a priority for government officials to address this issue. We need to look at medically assisted treatment. There are other examples of that working. There was a recent article in Rhode Island with the medically assisted treatment that they've worked on with people who come into incarceration addicted, and they help them as they leave and transition out. We need programs that really help rebuild people and treat it like the public health crisis that it is. And I definitely want to focus attention on that immediately. It should have been done a long time ago. And the issue with the jail is that the current commissioners are wanting to spend economic development income tax money on the jail. They didn't want to go to referendum so the people could vote it down. They're wanting to spend the economic development income tax money, which is used in multiple ways, if you look it up. It can go to a local nonprofit organization, it can go to economic development projects, it can go to many different places. Well, if we're wrapping up $2 to $3 million of economic development income tax money every year to pay a bond on a jail that nobody wants, we're gonna see bigger problems as we approach this in our community.
To answer your question, yes, I would support a needle exchange program, and I think that the public health community in general is supportive of that. We just need government officials to be on board, and I would absolutely support that, and take whatever other suggestions that they have, because we have a mental health crisis and a drug addiction crisis, and we don't have the facilities for a huge percentage of people that need the help right now.
Jails have become the de facto mental health
Mental
institutions.
health and drug addiction.
And the rehab center.
Yeah, right.
So, obviously, if this was fixed at the federal level through universal health care,
Push it off on Janine.
well, that would make the local level so much easier. But in the short term, until it's fixed at the federal level, we're gonna have to do something. We're gonna have to get together, do public-private partnerships, work with the hospital, work with health organizations, until we can provide relief for people, because we obviously have a crisis at a number of different levels here: mental health, drug addiction.
I agree, and also, I mean, right now, there's 30,000 kids in the foster care system right now. Largely because of the opioid crisis. We've got sometimes one and sometimes two, both parents are addicted, and then both parents are in jail or incarcerated or on probation, and they can't take care of their kids. This, like you two both said, I mean, you can't arrest your way out of it. One of the things that I've spoken about is that in the 1980s, and I covered this, 80s and 90s when I was a reporter, we saw so many black men black men, black fathers, black grandfathers, black uncles, going to prison after the crack cocaine addict, after the crack cocaine crisis. they weren't taking drug courts, they weren't giving, opportunities for rehabilitation in lieu of prosecution. They were taken and thrown into prison for long prison terms. This meant that they were taken away from their families. Those that did work were no longer working, so then sometimes, the system then had to take care of their kids. Sometimes the wives lost custody of their kids, sometimes the wives lost their homes. I mean, it was just so perpetuating. And I see the same thing now, unfortunately, happening to the larger community and in large numbers, the Caucasian communities. And what I would say is, learn from what happened to the minority communities 30 years ago. Don't act as if this is not a disease, because it is a disease. And a lot of it started by the overprescribing of drugs from doctors. With the prescription drugs, Oxycontin, hydrocodone, Vicodin, all that stuff. I mean, they had the pain chart that would say, this is what you take when you're in this level of pain. 5 pills for level 10. Well, come to find out, that whole level of chart or whatever wasn't even, who made that up? Guess who made it up? The drug companies. So then, now we're at a different point, and they're not prescribing that many pills, but people still have the same addictions, and they're going to get the drugs somewhere. So that all being said, I'm definitely for the HIV needles. I'm definitely for more drug treatment facilities. I love the idea because I'm from a family of faith, a faith-based centers trying to help and stand in the gap when for government programs, drug courts. We got to do something, and I believe that it starts with our communities. I don't, even though federal dollars are appropriated for these things, but at some point we, as the members of this community, are going to have to decide how we're going to handle it, because these are our brothers, our sisters, our daughters, our sons, even our fathers and our mothers and grandmothers, because they too were overprescribed many times with drugs they didn't need and got addicted to.
Well, I'm glad that Janine's brought up the medical side of things, because people declaring themselves as having a certain level of pain, getting the prescriptions, and then they're in poverty, so they sell the prescription on the black market, and that just perpetuates the crisis. It's not only a healthcare crisis, it's a poverty crisis. Because once you get in a situation where you have somebody in the family incarcerated or more, and you get out of that, and you're tagged as someone who has had a drug-related past, it's very difficult to find a job and get yourself started again. It's a problem which we have to address on multiple levels, and you've covered most of them. But one you haven't covered is the role that medical marijuana can play in helping people overcome their addiction. It's been found that in states where they have legalized medical marijuana, that there's a 6 to 12% reduction in visits to the emergency rooms in hospitals because of opioid-related admissions. So we need to look at cannabis and legalizing the medical marijuana, and there's also other benefits to certain cannabis products, which we really should move forward. But physicians and also the veterans community very much interested in having medical marijuana as being a treatment option for veterans who are suffering from all sorts of veteran-related issues. We have to also remember and compassionately look at the tragedies that occur in the community as a result of deaths. Young people getting caught up in the drug crisis, overdosing, and dying at a very young age. It's a real tragedy that hits families, and that we have to understand that dimension of it and really reach out and help people on multiple levels. Thank you.
I have a question generally, I want to make a comment first to George. I liked very much your statement of why you're running. As a political scientist, I really felt it was right on the mark from the standpoint of what one could say in a difficult political world without sort of going off into some convention somewhere which would not work. So, and I do have the DACA student check for you too. And Janine, are you familiar with the Keel Oil business that Greg Pence was involved in, the Pence family? Okay, you are familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Because I think circulars downstate would limit farmers trying to get their harvest done and saying, well, why go vote for that guy and not knowing much about you? So I'm delivering these, I'll give you one.
Thank you.
Downstate, and I've already delivered about 150 of them. With Juanita Sorrell, one of my members of the Davis for Public Justice.
Well, you feel free to comment if they don't know about Kill Brothers.
Well, well, these people are going to be voting for these people anyway, so I think anyway. But anyway, it's important that you're known up here, but not downstate very much, I think, if I'm correct about that.
We're trying to get down there.
I know, but
We're doing a 19 counties in 19 days here coming up, and we're gonna start down south, so.
And also, Gene, I love your restaurant and your grocery.
Thank you.
And, well, Gene Ring.
Dave.
Dave.
I had a restaurant too. We were neighbors, so I didn't know if you were talking
Yeah,
about that.
there's a Gene Ring that plays basketball.
Okay.
Sorry about that. And Jason, you say Donati? Yes, sir.
Donati, Donati.
Voice of that,
Potato
Donati.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, I'm working on the jail issue, just that issue. And so I hope whichever one of you wins, you really take that on. That's such an idiotic, boondoggle, the kind of thing that we political scientists see all the time and know how hard it is to get anything done about it because there's no radar, no focus. So I'll hand you this, and then if somebody wants me to talk about the Keel Oil business, I'll do that later. You should be the one to talk about me.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Winslow.
Have a look at this.
Nice to meet you.
Just take
I've got a question here. This is for Dave. Do you have any specific plans or ideas on how to improve transparency and honesty to the Delaware County voters?
Yes, actually, I alluded to this earlier. There's a nonprofit organization called Represent Us, and right now they have legislation going out in counties and states around the country that would promote an anti-corruption agenda, ensure an anti-corruption agenda. And Missouri right now has an anti-corruption agenda on the ballot. They worked and got thousands of signatures to get this on the ballot, and right now lobbyists are trying to take it off. And the same thing happened up in South Dakota last year. Lobbyists don't want to lose their seat at the table. So as lobbyists get involved, whether it's local special interests, which tend to be smaller, but corporations, and there's a lot of corruption at the local level. At the state level, it tends to be a little bit larger with larger lobbyists, but an anti-corruption agenda would be a great way to do that. Also, I think getting the right official in who will open up the process and include and encourage participation instead of coming in with an agenda, forcing it through on people and keeping the process closed. A great example is the jail issue, which keeps coming up, but that property was bought for $2.9 million, and then the public forum was held the next week.
Yeah.
So, let's hire the right people for the job, and then when they get in there, we can actually make corruption illegal, and then we can enforce it, and that's my plan for increasing transparency.
this is for anyone who wants to take it, but is there gerrymandering in Indiana? And what would you do, and what would you suppose would be a good thing to do about it?
Well, I guess that would be my domain, although Dean would have to vote on that. But,
There's not a problem with that, is there?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I'm afraid there is a serious problem in many states, not just Indiana, and gradually in other states, there have been legal challenges that have been won. In North Carolina recently, and also Pennsylvania, so there is certainly hope that there is some legal pressure, judicial pressure to help correct that problem. But I think, you see, you have kind of a conflict of interest here. It's been going on ever since the Constitution was made, where the party in power every 10 years after the census gets a chance to redraw the lines. And that's why both Democrats and Republicans have been guilty of gerrymandering. I think you need to take gerrymandering out of the hands of politicians. That's going to be hard to do, but the more the public becomes aware of that, the more we can create a groundswell to get that done. There are algorithmic models that can be used to redraw the lines in a state, and that would give the whole the human interaction with it totally out. You just let the computer draw the line, let the math do the job. I'm not fully in favor of that because I think there are certain influences that need to be considered. There needs to be a human element involved. So I would form a nonpartisan citizens redistricting commission. And by nonpartisan, I mean these people would not be running for office, they would not be in office, there would not be any advantage to them in terms of people voting for them or whatever. It would be private citizens. They would start with the algorithmic model and then have the nonpartisan commission tweak it, adjust it, and so forth, and then bring that before the legislature. You have to bring it before the legislature now because the legislature has to vote on it. I don't know if that can be changed. I think over time perhaps it can, once we see the damage that's been done. You know, all this goes back to Karl Rove. Karl Rove came up with this idea of how to create a permanent conservative majority. And gerrymandering was a part of his strategy, and to the point where it's become a corrupting influence. And so it's kind of snuck up on us, and we have to, in order to make elections fair, in order to make district competitive, and in order to bring out the issues that are the most pertinent at the time, we need to correct that problem. So my approach would be to establish a nonpartisan redistricting commission, to begin with an algorithmic model, modify it according to the human interests of the commission, and then if the legislature doesn't go along with it, and if it tweaks it in disproportionate ways, I would make sure the voters know about it. Voters need to know, be informed, and see the injustice that's being done. And that's a way to bring some objectivity to the problem.
I would believe it is a problem, and I do believe, like George said, I don't know about the computer algorithm thing, I don't know about that yet, but third-party agency to do it, I believe is the way to go.
Janine's district is a perfect example of gerrymandering. That's why she's having to drive to complete southern Indiana. I don't know if everybody knows what gerrymandering is, but it's the redrawing of the districts of candidates that is, when the ruling party, the majority party is in charge, every 10 years, they can redraw the districts. And they can withdraw them to favor, like if a Republican's in charge, they can withdraw them to favor Republicans by, so in District 6, they come up and they grab Muncie, which tends to be a Democrat town, and they included a big, long Republican rural district.
All the way to Ohio River.
Yes, so it makes Muncie, it makes your votes
And they
not
took
count
out,
in any sort of way.
they took Anderson out of that
Yes.
last time, because that's where a lot of the rural,
That would've been
I'm
too.
sorry, the urban votes were.
That would have been 2 Democrat towns, you can't have that. So,
Not if you want to
and it
fix
goes,
it.
both ways. The Democrats do the same thing when they're in charge, and it needs to be changed. It needs to be taken out. And I do favor the computerized algorithm method. I think that take the human, which, you know, you can argue keeping the human element in, and, I don't know.
You use the Barnsley squares model just simply as the base,
Yeah.
and then take human consideration.
Yes, yes.
That's long been understood mathematically in here.
There is I have a platform video on gerrymandering, which only takes a minute and a half to watch. And the person who edited it, my video editor here, Adam, did an excellent job. He put the maps of the district as they've changed over the past, I don't know, 10, 20 years. And if you go through it and, you know, push pause on each time, you can see how drastically different the map has been changed. So you might want to look at that video and you'll see.
Can I just make a quick comment? I saw firsthand, the negative effects of gerrymandering, testifying at the Indiana State House when, HB 1315 was first proposed to take over Muncie Community Schools. You had an out-of-town legislator write a law about a community without even consulting the elected officials of that community, and they didn't even know until the morning it was to be read. And every attempt to actually insert any input into that bill was completely ignored and never allowed in. Opportunities to read amendments weren't even allowed. Representative Sue Arrington had amendments that could actually address the issue at hand. Some of them weren't even allowed to be heard. So I saw that firsthand testifying at the State House on behalf of Muncie Community Schools, and it is a problem that needs addressed, and hopefully our elected leaders can address that.
I should mention in North Carolina, they had a gerrymandering run.
Yeah.
And what they did is they had, you know, run 10K, I don't know what it was, but they drew the line, and you had to run the line.
Yeah.
And they saw how it went through, you know, alleys and all these, so. One way, a good way of calling public attention to the issue. For those of you who are runners.
Alabama, Pennsylvania,
All right.
Supreme Court.
6th district.
Got another question here. Before I hand it off, just a quick update. With 11:28 to go in the second quarter, Ball State 14, Central Connecticut 0.
All right, so my name is Jay Kuhn, I'm at Muncie Says. I just want to say right now, I think that all of your counties are a much better option than the alternative. We have Democrats here, we have someone who's running as an independent, we have the Green Party here, we don't have any Republicans. And part of the reason I think you guys have mentioned gerrymandering and you've talked about campaign finance reform, there is so much money that comes into this state from out of the state. There's so much on the other side. And I want to know what you plan on doing to win, because we don't have a lot of time left. How do you get this message out when there's so many, so many other resources on the other side that's countering the message? How do you make that happen between now and November?
Well, I think what you need to publicize where each candidate is getting their money. We came up and we're gonna continue to adjust this. All the candidates and the amount of money they receive from the NRA, and that's gonna come out, that's gonna be published, and you'll know then how much.
Is it in rubles or in dollars?
Huh?
Rubles or in dollars?
We should do it in both, shouldn't we? So publicizing the amount of money that the candidates get from special interest group, I think is really important. Of course, it's really a tragedy that the McCain-Feingold law was overruled by the Supreme Court. And that just threw out all that precedent, and it was just a very careless decision. And now it is becoming an issue all over the country. So we have to, Citizens United is a law that needs to be overturned, and we need to amend it some way. And you need to vote for candidates that don't take the money from corporate.
Well, one of the things that I think that our campaign has been doing, because I announced July 4th of 2017, is just focusing on grassroots, a grassroots campaign. I've gone to all 19 counties, even though there are far away. Sometimes it takes 2.5 hours, 3 hours to get down there. But we go to every single event as much as possible, as we're invited to. We go to parades, we go to festivals, we go to fairs, we go to things like this, events like this. We canvass, we knock on doors, we just get the vote out as much as we can. And our numbers are looking pretty good. I'm really pleased at where we're at right now. I believe we're gonna win. And what I keep telling people is, remember where you're at when I told you that this is going to be the biggest political upset in modern history, modern American history, because we are going to win. And the way that we're gonna win is with people like you. They're gonna go out and register the people to vote, and you're gonna go out and let people know that they can go on their apps on their phones, they can go to the courthouse and vote, that by October the 9th, we're gonna have more people registered in the state of Indiana and in this district than we have had in a very, very long time. We're looking at matching, and I'd like to not only match, but go way over what Obama had in this particular district in 2008. One of the things that they always say about Indiana is that we're a red state. But are we a red state, or are we a state that votes mostly red? And by that I mean, have we really reached everyone? Because if you have 24% of the people that are voting right now, that means 76% haven't been voting. So have we knocked on doors? Have we found people? Have we encouraged them? Have we given them a reason to vote? I actually believe that we're more 2008 than we are 2018. If we give people a reason to vote, and God knows right now, there is a reason to get out and vote. Our country is in a sad state. And if you don't know it, you're living under a rock. There's every reason to vote this time. And the reason why I'm going to encourage it is because I want to be part of that House of Representatives that writes the articles of impeachment against Donald John Trump. I'm going to be excited to be able to do it. We have to take our country back. We have to act like patriots. We have to stand up and be bold and courageous, and it starts with you, and it starts with me. We have to do it, and we have to show up on November the 9th of 2018. That's how we're going to win.
I agree with everything that was just said, and add a couple of things. I ran in the primary for state senate, and it was a big gerrymandered district, and I knocked on thousands of doors, met tons of people, heard lots of stories, and my message, which I just couldn't get out in time because Indiana has an early primary, I won Delaware County. I did not win Madison County, and they had more people in there than Delaware County did. But the message was, we can't just win an election, we have to heal a divide. And we do that by getting out and talking to people and finding common ground and spreading messages of hope and of putting integrity and truth and all those things, making those things matter again. And it's retail politics is the old-fashioned term for knocking on doors, getting out the vote, pressing the flesh, shaking hands, talking to people, face-to-face communication. And that is really what we've got to do. We've got to do that. We've got to, find out what the issues are and find out what's bothering people or what could be better or what they're happy about too. And when we do that and we create that personal connection and we get in touch with folks, that's when, and we make politics fun again. Politics doesn't have to be this negative, horrible, so many people don't get engaged. How many people do you know that don't want to talk about politics? I don't want to talk about politics, right? Well, it's become this huge negative thing. If we don't take back control of politics and make it approachable and fun and something that we all want to participate in, then we get more of the same. And more of the same is 20%, 25% voter turnout. We still didn't have a good turnout in the primaries, folks, not in Delaware County, not in Madison County. We can do better, and we've got to do better. And we need to see everyone vote in every election, every time, no matter what, I don't care if you're not super happy about the candidates, vote every time. And if we can do that, then we'll see things start to change.
Going last is hard up here, but, obviously.
I'll start this end.
Obviously, relationship building, I mean, it's getting out, knocking on doors, walking the streets, getting to hear from as many people as you possibly can. I think we got into a lot of the messes, locally, statewide, and nationally, because elected officials aren't listening to the people. And so there are lots of concerns that I'm hearing from people, you know, for instance, the jail. I'm estimating 85 to 90% of the people in the community don't support this plan, but it's still moving forward because they technically only need 2 votes. So it's important to engage. I'm excited to see more young people engaged, but we're not doing a good enough job of getting young people engaged in this process. I think we need to push for more education about governance in our schools from an early age. There's lots of things we can do to encourage this, encourage civic groups in our schools, those types of things. And civil discourse is something that you just don't see very often. And I think it's okay if we disagree on some things, but we can still have a conversation about it. So getting out there, talking to people, being objective, and empathy is a really important thing to understand as well when we're out there listening. So, great question.
Thank you.
Right, 2 points on that issue. First of all, getting students involved. One thing I'm really emphasizing is that we need student debt relief. We need I forgot to figure. I wrote an article about it recently. I forgot to figure out what it's in the trillion. It's in the $1 trillion now. Student debt, and that's just the bubble that's just waiting to burst. And certain states are already starting to address that. What Indiana needs to say. I like what Dave talked about. He used the word healing. You know, in peace education, you have conflict resolution, but you also have reconciliation. Conflict resolution means you kind of solve the problem, but it doesn't necessarily mean the parties are actually working together. They're sort of tolerating each other, but you solve the conflict. Reconciliation means you restore the working relationship, and that's what healing is. Restoring, and that's what we need to do. We need to bring the 2 parties together in that sense. And I would like to caution the whole idea about impeachment, because impeachment is not a legal process. You know, impeachment is a political one. A president can be impeached, but if they're not convicted of doing anything illegal, then they stay in office and they succeed, or they win in a sense, and it often emboldens them. And so it becomes a zero-sum game, and it may not be one we want to be involved in, given who the vice president is. Sometimes things happen by themselves. That conviction takes place without that process. So just be sure you understand. I'm not necessarily entirely opposed to impeachment, but just understand that it's not a legal process, which many people seem to think it is. It's a political one, and it can actually come back to haunt you.
I actually wanted to address the first part of that question, just from the library standpoint. Just putting it out there, being official, I did ask any number of Republican and Libertarian candidates. No, you did it, I don't care. Even when you message somebody on Facebook Messenger, you can see when they receive the message. I know for a fact that there are people who receive the messages, but I cannot. So, I don't want, I understand who is up here now. I don't want that to come across as the library promoting one ideology or another. I did put that out there. I invited a number of people. So.
My grandfather voted for Wendell Wilkie.
You answered my question was, who else had you invited, and what were the reasons for not attending?
Scheduling conflicts, just not replying at all. I mean, I won't get into it too much, but, And then other candidates, after the roster got filled up now, other candidates came out and said, hey, maybe I'd like to do that. So there may be maybe a second one of these coming up. Give other people a shot.
Well, if you can find Greg Pence, let him, give him my number, because he doesn't seem to be responding to any of our requests either for a debate or a sit-down conversation.
You read that, you'll see why.
I imagine.
Okay, there was one more question that was submitted, and, open to whomever. And I know that the different offices you're running for might handle this topic in different ways. It might have more or less bearing on the office you're running for. Are the police too violent? What would you do to help police be keepers of the peace?
So, I think there's many approaches that we need to look at with issues related to police violence or how a certain police officer handles a certain situation. I don't think it's good to box them all into the same box. I know plenty of law enforcement officers who are great people doing the work that they love to do. But recently in Delaware County, Sheriff Dudley has actually created a citizens advisory committee that is, that he had nothing to do with appointing people. It was, community leaders came to him and asked for if he would be interested in doing that. And so they did application processes. So community leaders actually applied to this committee, and it's a citizen review committee that reviews specific situations that happen in Delaware County, and then they will go to the sheriff and say, this is their recommendation. Now, ultimately, the sheriff still has the call on what should be done, but it's a group of citizens that are concerned and have different backgrounds that can actually bring great points to the table about a specific instance that happened. I'd like to see that happen with MPD in Muncie as well. But I think that restorative justice is something that we really need to start focusing on. I don't know why we don't do more of it, which goes back to healing and reconciliation. And incarceration is not the answer. I find it disheartening as a parent that our population is declining, schools are closing, but our population in our jail is rising rapidly. So I think there are multiple ways that we can work collectively with our local law enforcement officers, and I have found that to be accessible if you approach specific law enforcement leaders in our community. I've hosted forums with them through volunteer work with Race Muncie, Reconciliation Achieved through community engagement. We've hosted multiple forums about work done locally, in my opinion.
I would say, to answer that specifically, I would say that there are instances, of course, we all know there are instances of police that are too violent. But most, overwhelmingly, are doing a great job and they're professionals. And I saw a Chris Rock special on Netflix, who's maybe the funniest guy of my generation. And Chris Rock says, well, there's some jobs where you just don't want one bad apple. He's like, a pilot is one of those jobs where you don't want one bad apple. And then he's like, but we get what we pay for. So I think we need to be compensating law enforcement, and I'm very much in favor of community policing. Because if we actually have more law enforcement on the streets, and we do have I know that there's a contract stall in Muncie Police right now, and I think we need to be taking care of law enforcement so that they're compensated and they feel good about their jobs. And if we have more out on the streets who actually know their community, their station, in their neighborhoods, and then it shows there's a pare down of violence because they know who they're dealing with. They know, who's in trouble in the community and who's not. And that method works really well. And that's my philosophy towards community policing is what's going to fix a lot of these problems.
Okay. I do believe that police brutality and driving while black or driving while minority is an issue. I believe it's an issue in America. And while maybe you have pockets that are worse than others, from what it seems in California, Los Angeles Police Department has had an extremely terrible history. Okay. I have 12 brothers. I'm sorry, 11 brothers. One of my brothers passed away. 11 brothers, a father, I have 3 sons, and a husband. And many people that I care about that have been on the other end of a police officer that is not mature, and maybe doesn't even have a way to relate to minorities. That's part of it. Sometimes you have these young officers, and when you do your research and your studies, you'll see that most of the police brutality cases involve a lot of new, green police officers that haven't been in the force maybe but 6 months, sometimes a year, sometimes two years. Or you'll see on the other end, maybe someone that's getting ready to retire and is just tired of it. But mainly, it's the young guys that are out there, and they're just these little, I guess, young guns, and they just want to prove themselves, and they don't have the experience and the wisdom of dealing with people of a different race. Sometimes they've grown up in communities where they've never even really gotten to know African Americans. Sometimes they're afraid of African Americans, and if you're afraid and your gun's on the trigger already, you're more apt to pull it. So, having lived with that fear for my sons as an African American mother, I've had to have to talk with my sons that when you get pulled over, what you do is you put your hands right here, and the other hand right here, and you shut up and you listen to every single thing that the police officer tells you to do, even if you don't agree with it. My sons have been pulled over because the light above the license plate was out. I mean, who here has been pulled over for that?
Not me.
One person out of this group, because it doesn't happen very often, but it has happened to my son. Another one got pulled over for a light that was out, and he went through the light that was out. How do you pull over a light you didn't see because it was out? That's been a problem for us, and I hate to say it, even locally at times. We've had to call the Ball State Police chief and meet with him, because at one point during the summer, not only were we felt like every member of our house had been, because we lived on campus when our house burned down, we were pulled over so often, it was insane. We didn't end up meeting with him, but we certainly did talk with him over the phone, and he heard our needs, and after a while, they kind of just let us alone. I don't know how else to say that. Man of color at Ball State University has reported it time and time again. They feel that they're disproportionately pulled over, and possibly targeted. So some of that is relative, and sometimes we can't really measure it, but having lived almost 50 years, I'll be 50 next year, I know that does happen. My dad, who's a pastor in Carversville, Indiana, he's a light-skinned guy. He was pulled over and handcuffed and brought to the ground because supposedly he looked like a suspect who was almost as dark as this curtain right now. So, we've been there, we've been afraid, and we know that it is a problem, which is why, actually, I decided to become one of the founding members, not the founding member, but I'm part of a group called the Muncie Matters Police Alliance. And we're a liaison between the police officers and the community. We started it several years ago after the Trayvon Martin murder, in my opinion. I know that's a legal term too. Okay, so it was Trayvon Martin killing. So we wanted to address those issues and those problems that we were seeing nationally, and then also bring them home and see what we can do as well. We haven't met in a while, but I'm hoping that we can meet again. There were some best practices, things that we talked about. Like I said, one of the things that we talked about was the idea that we need to figure out who is doing most of these pullovers that seem targeted. And it was the younger guys. One of the things we talked about was having more of a buddy system between the young cops and the older cops, so that when they, or more seasoned cops, that when, they're pulled over, they're not so apt just to go after a person because of their race. Diversity training, being more sensitive to the idea that maybe if someone's already tense because they're being pulled over, I know every single time I've been pulled over, it's been frightening for me. I don't know. My son called me from Elwood, and I'm almost done. He called me from Elwood a few years ago in the middle of the night because he got pulled over and his headlight was out, and he had me on speakerphone the whole time. It was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning. But I felt relieved knowing that, the person handled it okay. But there's no way that he would have felt fine without having his mom on the other end of the line. So, yeah, it is a problem, and I hope that in coming years that we're able to address it more properly.
Yeah, I can pick up my 16-point plan for Indiana, which is on the table there. You'll notice, I think at point 16 is de-escalation training for police. We have, there are strategies which you can learn, and you learn a lot of this through, if you go through mediation training. There are strategies which help you not escalate, and in fact de-escalate the circumstance. So as Secretary of State, I would be an advocate for de-escalation training for community police, and I agree with Dave that we really need to have community representation. There needs to be if your community were 25% of the population is African American and 75% is white, then you need to have 25% of the police should be African American. I mean, it's not kind of it's not like you're training to be a heart surgeon or something where you have a very select population that goes through all that. So there should be the proportional, and the people in the police force should know the community and hopefully be from the community. But we also do have this problem of getting people to apply to be police officers, and that has to do with pay, that has to do with hiring, and that's really an important issue to look at as well. I think engagement is something that needs to be taught, not only for the police, but also for citizens. And I appreciate what Janine just said about having your hands on the steering wheel. I do that when I'm pulled over. I have my hands here so the police officer knows that I'm not reaching for a weapon. I don't have a weapon hidden somewhere. He sees right away that I'm not a threat. He or she sees right away I'm not a threat to them. And there are certain engagement strategies, both through speech and also body language, that can be learned both by police officers and also by citizens, which would be very helpful for people that all should be learning.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. One of the issues that have been brought up we all went through the 2016 election, many instances of polling places being closed on important primary races, locking people out, people with status being changed without their knowing about, people being tossed off the road, all of the voting states were pulled out in the primary, leading up to the selection, and there was, in my lifetime, it was the worst 2 candidates that America ever offered for presidential office. And a lot of people that registered and got involved, especially when Bernie Sanders was running as an independent and was drawing crowds of 30 and 40,000 people, packing venues of 20,000 people with 20,000 people waiting outside. And the voting disruptions and the voting irregularities, which locked him out of office, I think was responsible for the 2016 election having a 20% Delaware County turnout on the elections. People were disenfranchised from their vote. So a lot of people have long said my vote didn't count, and the 2016 elections proved that. The voting irregularities with the computers, the hackability of the computers, which have been proven time and time again, and all of the irregularities with the different states that use the computers. I mean, people just don't trust the political process. 80% of people want Medicare for all, but we're never gonna get it in the legislatures. We wanna change gerrymandering, but citizens can't offer up a proposal be put on the ballot because the legislature has made that illegal. So how do we empower citizens, and how do we get people, how are you gonna get people interested to vote for you? Which, if they knew you and they knew your message and they knew you opposed the power structures which have locked them out, they would be very interested in getting involved. But that hope message has been played out so much, with so much heartbreak and disappointment, that people are feeling disenfranchised, and how do we get those people back?
Well, first of all, first of all, you can't adopt a hopeless situation, because then you're giving in to things, to nothing changing. So you have to move ahead with some sort of positive attitude and approach. As far as purging people from the rolls, I don't think anybody should be purged from the voter rolls unless there's documentation that they're either deceased or they moved out of state. The idea that, make the assumption, oh, just because you haven't voted over the past 2 elections or something, and you didn't return a postcard, that therefore you can be purged, that's an assumption which is not valid, because a lot of times that affects poorer people. Poorer people move around more, and they're likely to have not changed their address or forwarded their address, or the 6 months has passed, the postcard never reaches them, so it's inherently discriminatory. No one should be purged from the voter roll unless there's documentation that they've either moved out of state or they are deceased. You know, the machines that we use for voting, yes, you can separate them from the internet and make them somewhat impervious to hacking, but there's all sorts of other ways. Machines can break down. The whole power grid could break down, and that could be something that's that would be imposed by hackers and wouldn't affect the voting machines at all. So that's why I think we should adopt a method like they use in the state of Oregon. In the state of Oregon, they have paper ballots. You mail your ballot, you fill it out, there are drop boxes where you put it in place, those ballots are counted, you have a direct tactile connection with the voting process, not going through several layers of technology. Not that I'm against technology, but obviously we're in a very vulnerable time, given what's been revealed over the past many years. So I believe we should return to a simpler system. You know, Connie Lawson is spending $7.5 million on election security. $7.5 million. If we have paper ballots, we could reduce that by 75% at least. I mean, it is outrageous that we have to spend that much money when there's a simpler, less expensive system that can put in place that people would have direct contact with, direct tactile contact with, they would feel much more confident about, and it would slow down the process a little bit, but that's worth it to get people more connected with the process. Thank you.
We've hit the 90-minute mark. Is everybody all right? Okay. I'll tell you, we've got one more live question here, and then maybe one more from here. Does that sound good?
Can I respond to this last one? Is that all right? Because he specifically asked, how do we get people more involved or back involved in the process? And I really feel like government accountability is where that starts. You know, we have corruption and cronyism, and at the local level, it's completely disenfranchised voters. They feel like their votes don't matter, or it doesn't matter who they elect. They're not going to represent the people. They're going to ignore what the people want. They have agendas they're going to push through. And so I hear it, you know, at the grassroots, ground level every day, that people, oh, this is Muncie, it's corrupt, it's always been that way, it's always going to be that way, Delaware County, that's how it is. And, you know, we have a guilty plea from our building commissioner for money laundering and wire fraud, and he had 34 counts dropped down to 2. And this was just a couple of months ago. And we have to shine lights on that. We can't shy away from it, and we have to expose it. And then we have to make sure that we're not voting in party cronies that only are self-serving. They want to benefit themselves, and they aren't thinking about the people. Because when that money gets taken away at the government level, and it doesn't trickle down to the people at the bottom, that's your tax dollars. That's your tax dollars that give us good roads. That's your tax dollars that give us good schools, that, you know, keep police and fire on the streets. And that's what we need to build our community, make our community safe, to have a good economy, and so that we can all move ahead. And when we're not having that level of government accountability, not to mention the fact it gives our community a bad name, because other communities have expelled corruption. And we haven't managed to do that here. It will take a community-wide effort, and it will take lots of transparency, and it will take lots of engagement from voters. So we need everybody to go out and engage in the process, because the process works when we use it.
Hi, my name is Nate. I'm a student at IUPUI. I had a question that might not be pertinent to all of the offices you are running for, but I know Ms. Lake specifically it is to yours. I had a question about the recent decision to increase our military spending to, I think it's $716 billion, which I believe it's the other four highest countries is $600 billion, I'm sorry. I was curious if you guys thought that this was a good use of our tax dollars, or if you thought there were other ways we could spend it more efficiently and better for the people of the United States. Yeah, thank you.
Well, actually, yes, I do think there are efficient ways to spend it in healthcare, education. I don't know, giving more pay increases to teachers, helping parents with daycare options. You realize that the Pentagon has never been audited, not one time. And it was supposed to be audited this year, but I think it's pending. I think they've got a lot of other issues in the State Department, which has been gutted by our current administration. I don't have a problem. I mean, I'm all for military. That's one thing that people, I think, get wrong about Democrats. We appreciate the good military. It's our, protects us, all that. But we also should be looking at some of the monies that are spent inside that budget. Some of the things I mentioned on my platform is, are we, the places that the military is at, all over the globe, do we really need to be all those different places? Some places we've been for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Even someone said World War II, we're in some places that were still, related to that. I think there needs to be studies related, to where we're at and whether or not we really need to still be in all of those places. I'm not saying that we don't need to be in some places, but that's certainly something that could save perhaps, millions of dollars. Mercenaries is another thing that I was looking at, and I've mentioned before too. We spend millions of dollars on mercenaries every year, but we have trained soldiers and trained military that can do the exact same job. Why are we outsourcing that? I just believe that there's an opportunity to bring it down, and these billions and billions of dollars. I met a lady the other day that said that her husband works in the Defense Department, and there's a job that literally takes, this is the true story, and as soon as I can find out exactly what it is, she says it takes 6 hours to do, and they charge you $200,000 for that job, and it's an accountant, believe it or not. 6 hours, and some corporation is getting paid $200,000. But there's a reason why the Pentagon has not been audited, because of those particular things. And the money is going to cronies and to different people, family members maybe, corporations that belong to your longtime friend, consulting type of positions. We can cut that number down, I'm quite sure.
I prefer to get you elected than any more studies. We have plenty of studies. I assure you.
Well, there definitely needs to be an audit of the Pentagon, I know that.
Well, this is not an area I would deal with as Secretary of State of Indiana. I don't have much to say about the national military. However, I have a son who was in the Army for 5 years with the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, and served in Fort Gordon doing intelligence work related to the NSA. And then he took a year in addition to that and went to Iraq and the Kurdish region. And this is where I think the future is in terms of where we should be placing emphasis, because it's like police work, only it's trying to avoid the danger that is yet to come. He got certified in Farsi and Arabic, and that's how he was involved in that intelligence kind of work, looking for suspicious activity on messages that are intercepted and so forth. That's a valid place to put military spending. Donald Trump, when he was running for president, talked about updating our nuclear arsenal. Well, we don't need thousands of nuclear weapons. If you blow off 100, you're going to destroy the human race. So that's a total waste of money in addition to a military parade. So I think where you place the money, you can reduce costs tremendously, especially in the nuclear area. And we're all familiar, of course, with the cost overruns that are reported now and then of new weapon systems that are developed. And that's where audit, I hope you can do something about that. That's where auditing of the Pentagon would really be a very important step.
I'm going to relate that question, since this is a county commissioner job. I'm going to relate it back to spending in general. And obviously, I do think there's room to cut in the national defense spending. I grew up low income, and I run a small business, so I'm used to doing a lot with a little. And the saying out there, at the grassroots level, is that it's really easy to spend other people's money. Now that's the crux of what we have happening, is that it's easy to spend other people's money. If it's your money, you're going to be a lot more cautious with it. But when you've got a government budget, then you're going to be more loose with your spending. So I know that there is a lot of room for frugality in government. I think we need more small business people in government, and more people who are willing to watch the bottom line. And that's what I'd like to do for the county.
Well, I might as well comment since everyone else did. But I think we should, I'll relate this somewhat locally. We all need to get with reality. Tax caps is in the Constitution. Okay, so when I was on the school board, I learned that we used to receive $20 million in tax revenues. Overnight, when that passed, it went to 11 million. We lost $9 million practically overnight and continue to lose that much money every year. We have to figure out as a community how we're going to survive and how we're going to do the best that we can with what we have. And when it comes to all these needs that we have to come together. And I think that's really the key piece moving forward. I think this is a pivotal moment for our community with all that's going on with the schools and the jail, infrastructure, population declining. So I just hope that we can all come together as a community and that we engage people that reflect our community and that we're more inclusive in the work that we do to bring more people to the table to have these discussions. That's a missing piece. One thing that commissioners do have a say in is we have like 20 to 25 different boards that we appoint people to once you're elected commissioner. I think 20 of those positions is the Fair Board. That's the largest board I've ever seen. But we have to make sure that we're reaching out to the community and getting more people involved in all of these processes so we can all figure this out together. So that's definitely something that I would like to address.
We'll do one more quick question that came in, and this will be sort of the conclusion. It's a very broad question, so I thought it might be a nice way to end up. And again, obviously, the offices you're running for are very different, so feel free to take this wherever. What is the one worst thing about Muncie? What is the best thing about Muncie? And how to fix the worst thing?
Best, worst, and what was in,
How best to address the worst thing?
I can go, I can start.
I just don't think there's anything worst about Muncie. I love living here and I love my community. I really mean that. I'm a glass half full kind of person. Even if there's problems and issues, I always think that we can find a solution. My newspaper's called The Good News for a reason. It's because I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic, even in this season that we're in right now, I'm optimistic. One of the things I love about Muncie, for sure, is that I think the community takes care of its own. It's one thing I found with Feed My Sheep. We don't go too much outside of Muncie, looking for other people to take care of and feed our people. We do that, it's always something that's on the radar for us. We've got various groups, Sustainable Muncie, up and down the county. It's always looking for ways to feed people and to shelter people and to help people here in Muncie. Maybe they do that in other places, but I know here we do it, and we do it well. I'm very proud of the community that I live in. I've stayed here for almost 30 years. I came here in 1987, and I found it to be very welcoming. It's the most steady city in the country, I think. Muncie is. It reflects the country, they say, in terms of demographics. I call it the center of the universe. I'm not ashamed at all to be from Muncie. I love my community. I love my city. I believe that if we continue to work together and come together, even despite our issues, I think that we can always look toward a brighter future. I know I want to be a part of that.
Well, the worst thing, and I'll finish with the positive, because I'd like to finish on the positive. The worst thing, which is what I just expressed, is corruption, and that gives our city and our county a bad name. And that's something that's well within our power to control and fix, and we just have to come together as a community and do that. We have to expel it, we have to shine a light on it, can't look away, and we have to make sure that we're doing our part as citizens, participating in the process, staying involved, getting other people to participate in the process, pushing people to go to meetings, all that we can do. And because the very best thing about our community is the people. Sarah and I lived out in Lake Tahoe after leaving from Ball State in the mid-90s. We lived out there for 3 years. It was considered, I don't know, it was like the 5th most photographed spot in the country. It's a beautiful area. We lived out there for 3 years. We had a steady job. We could have stayed. But we came back here because we like it here, and because we want to make a difference here. And there are always those who say, "Oh, you're crazy. Why did you come back to Muncie?" And I say, because we like it here. We like the people. We like the community. And I also believe that there's opportunity here for everyone. So in terms of looking forward and looking to the future, I'm really optimistic. I see people getting more engaged. I see people like tonight on a Thursday night showing up for meetings. And I'm really optimistic that we're going to take back control of our community and that we're going to work together and we're going to move forward into the next few years.
I'll go. So I've worked at youth education for over 10 years, and we've done stuff called straight talk, where I like to call, I'll substitute worse for even better if. So you would ask, hey, what do you think is a positive and what's an even better if, instead of, just calling it the worst. But the monthly community reports were about kids living in specific environments, whether that was drugs or lead poisoning or not having a meal, all these different environments, and then coming to school and it being expected to take a test that, you know, that affects your school system, and all these different systems in place that are affecting our families and our children in significant ways. And while a lot of people have stepped up, a lot of civic groups and churches and religious organizations are stepping up to address these issues, I think we can do more. And I think that is really one of the most important things we need to focus on, is really addressing the poverty that's affecting and gripping our families and our children, and trying to help build a healthy workforce, and trying to come up with programs that actually reduce recidivism instead of increasing it. And this whole idea of economic development based on housing inmates from other counties is a horrible idea, and we should not let that move any further. The best thing about Muncie and Delaware County is its potential. I really believe in that. I believe, again, this is the pivotal time for us. We have been faced, we're a Rust Belt city, have lost industry, tax dollars. We have all of these things happening right before our eyes, have been happening for so many years. But we have a lot of potential. We have a potential to actually bring Muncie and Ball State together. Things are happening every day that is encouraging that relationship. We have the opportunity to bring Muncie and rural Delaware County together. And these are things that I think we all need to focus on moving forward, because the potential for us is really the best thing about us right now.
Okay, well, first, the good news. And as I think we have a thriving community when it comes to the arts, when it comes to parks and recreation, when it comes to athletics. Muncie Civic Theater is outstanding. Our symphony, Muncie Symphony is outstanding. America's Hometown Band is active and performing all around, and the Hometown Jazz Band as well. We have planetarium shows that are free at the university. There's so many things the university offers the community as well. I know, you know, I have 2 children, and now a grandchild who's going through all sorts of athletic sports activities and so forth, soccer and whatever, and there's so many things that are offered in the community which I think support that. So I think the potential is there for growth, and also people taking advantage of all those wonderful things that bring people together from various diverse backgrounds. I think the negative is we seem to be voluntarily a segregated community. There's that saying, birds of a feather flock together. Well, we need to actively engage and bring people and have kind of activities which bring people from various ethnic traditions and faith traditions into the same environment, to get to know each other as human beings, to have common interests and so forth, and to thrive in that way. That kind of volunteer segregation, we've tried to, it's not simply based on race. I don't like to use the word race, because I think it's an obsolete term. There's only one race, and that's the human race. It's just different people, different colors and so forth. We're all one family. We're all one human family. We all have a common ancestor. I found out my brother did a DNA analysis, and so I found out I have sub-Saharan African DNA in me. So we're cousins. So I mean, I'm also part Neanderthal, but I won't mention it. But
his mother's side.
That's probably the Ball State.
But we have now organizations that are interfaith organizations in the community, and it started, I think, with the Muncie Interfaith Fellowship that Thomas Perksha, the minister at the time of the Unitarian Church, and myself, when I was director of Peace Studies, we started this Interfaith Fellowship, and it's just kind of grown. And we have, we have 2 prominent women in the community, and Annie Leados, a pediatrician, retired now, and Bibi Barami. They brought together, they were inspired to bring together people from the Jewish Temple and the Islamic Center together for a community dinner. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, the Jews and Muslims aren't supposed to get along, but they brought them together, and then they expanded it to a wonderful interfaith dinner that we have every year. And there's also the other groups that have sprung up based on community needs that turn out to be interfaith and also diverse in terms of ethnic background. So We need to focus on those types of organizations, those types of methods and events that can attract people from diverse backgrounds, so that we kind of break this kind of voluntary segregation and make ourselves more of an integrated community based on interests and events that we all can flourish from.
Concluding, Larry, fireworks. Yeah, oh, one final update before we get out of here. Halftime score, 21-0 Ball State. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Thanks to George Wolf, Lee Lake, Dave Ring, and Jason Lanning for agreeing to do this. Thanks for entertaining that last question. Look out for more stuff like this from the library. Like I say, this is the sort of thing we like to do as much as possible. I think it is very helpful. And keep showing up. And have a good night.